have selling a business, we have investing in business, which each one of those topics could take at least an hour. So ready, set, go. No, just kidding. So let's start with acquisition, or actually let's start with regulatory, Whitney.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, that's going to look a little bit different in every space. I've predominantly done personal work in kind of the Midwest states, really medical license states, a little bit of adult use in Missouri. And it's a process, right? Just made a few notes here. Let me refer to them.
Yeah, because they got us on the clock. We're timed here.
Yes.
So we got 30 minutes. We're keeping this agenda going.
So the tricky thing about writing a licensing application, and even I would probably say this is relevant from a purchasing perspective, if you're looking at someone's cannabis business license application, what I've seen on the operational compliance side is you're oftentimes committed to what you put into your license application will be how they expect you to run that business when you open your doors. And so in this room, how many folks have day-to-day operational cannabis experience? Bud tender, in a grow, in a lab? Okay, so we have kind of a mix. Keep your hands up for just a second. And for the rest of us looking at licenses from looking at this from a licensing perspective, these are the people that you want to know, right? These are the people who you can refer to, you can collaborate with to come up with the way to write your business license application, that once you do get to the point where your license has been awarded and you're ready to open your doors, that you're not opening yourselves up to regulatory risk or compliance risk with regulators as to how you're going to do business. So again, for those of you who did have your hands up in terms of writing license applications or reviewing one from a critical kind of due diligence analysis perspective, if you're looking to purchase a license, if you know how to do it, look for how you're going to poke holes in it, because ultimately what you're trying to do in writing your license application is demonstrate that you understand on a day-to-day basis how to comply with the letter of the law as it is written. So again, that it's good in terms of, one of the big takeaways I have from this conference as a whole is the collaboration and women supporting women. But again, let's be looking left and right, because it is the folks in this room, the people who know how to do the work, that are going to ultimately keep you compliant once you are operating as well. So a little bit different perspective than I think either of us two. I'd open it up for either of you to add on to that.
No, I agree in terms of applications and your application is supposed to demonstrate you have the capacity to run your business. That said, one of the areas that I see as problematic with the application process is people believe that the SOPs that you are creating for a competitive application process are the same SOPs upon which you're going to operate, and that is not true. Those SOPs that you're writing narrative form are not SOPs that will help your employees be successful in terms of being able to be capable of operating your business.
Sure. I mean, I think the key thing is there's a difference between theory and practice. Excuse me, theory and practice. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's important when you're building your team to understand and be clear on what you know, and then where your blind spots are, right? And so in building a team, you really want it to be a team where people feel that they have equal space at the table. And that they can own their part, right? And I think that that's what gets people in trouble, especially with small startups, because oftentimes you're working with a shoestring budget. And so you are really trying to wear multiple hats and trying to do all of the things. And there are some things that you can do that. There are some instances where you can do that, but there are other things where you're coming to compliance and legal that you do want to make sure on the front end that you have everything buttoned up properly. That's the area that you don't want to skim. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I see that even, with pro forma financials, right? Your pro forma financials are a way to just it's a guideline, right? And then you actually have to operate your business. So after acquisition of the license, what are next steps after you acquire a license?
So do you mean in terms of if I've purchased a license or if I've obtained a license through a competitive process?
That's a very good question. Well, I guess I would say if we talk about beginning with the end in mind, how do we plan for landscape with beginning with the end in mind? What is your exit plan?
Sure.
Just kind of planning for that.
So I think what you just said in particular is important, is beginning with the end in mind. We can pivot, we can change, but having a line of sight on where do you want to go, for me, it was exits. I wanted exits. Right now in the industry, if I started a company tomorrow, it may be that I want to continue that business for 15, 20 years and pass that down to my children or just be in perpetuity. So I think starting with the end in mind is important, but setting up in alignment with that and working backwards. So if I'm working towards an exit, I want to make sure I have all of my ducks in a row. I want to make sure I have a data room set up. I want to make sure that all my financials are correct, that I'm monitoring what my revenue is, that I understand what the market landscape is in terms of people acquiring those licenses in my specific market. And I'm going to set up my business in a way that is attractive to a potential acquirer. That would be my recommendation.
That's great operational advice. Yeah, definitely.
And I would just add to that, to the greatest extent you can, I say this as a self-proclaimed spreadsheet nerd, to the greatest extent that you can think of your business in terms of data, what are the same, what are different, how are you quantifying this, so that in that data room, you've got a really sexy data package that somebody can come in and look at and say, okay, this is how they handle this is what I'm looking at here, where you've got a lot of transparency and can manipulate the data, or someone else looking to consume your data in whatever they want to see it, can manipulate it to tell the story that they're looking to tell, or that you can tell the story that you're looking to tell with your data as well.
And I would just say data can save you. Data can save you. It can save you time, and it can save you money. And especially when, everything counts, every little bit counts, and you may not have as far of a runway, if you will, have as much in terms of discretionary spending that you can make. Your data is going to dictate, or should dictate, when you move, how you move, and where you're moving to, right? And that's along the whole supply chain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about actually acquiring a license. So let's talk about that path. What are different ways that you can actually acquire a license, opportunities, challenges? Go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
There are a host of investment bankers in this industry that will hold contacts to licenses that are for sale. You as an investor, if you're looking to acquire a license or a purchaser, you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence. And one of the areas that we really fell down on early on in the industry, and you're starting to see this play out with a lot of the MSOs in terms of their acquisition, is we were acquiring based on footprint, and because we wanted to increase footprints. You need to decide, why are you acquiring that license? What is the purpose of that acquisition? And then come up with a number in your head. Really do the research. It's not the days anymore where we're getting a multiple on gross revenue. It's a multiple on EBITDA. So make sure that you understand what the valuation of that license is and why you're acquiring it. I have some clients that are acquiring licenses specifically because they want the talent of that team to go up inside of their portfolio. So are you looking for team expertise? Are you brand new to the industry and you're just buying the license so that you yourself can get operational? Really understand your motivation. Start with the motivation, and then make sure you're doing your due diligence, and it's not just financial. It has to be qualitative. In cannabis, because of the way the markets are structured, because we're locked into single state markets, and because we are often not operating in communities that are friendly to us, you have to really be assessing the team, the market in which they're existing. Does the neighborhood like them? I've had clients that have bought acquired a facility in an area, and they never did any qualitative due diligence. The facility was running great, but after they got sued because they wanted to upload zoning, change their septic field, and the community went after them and spent $15 million defending that lawsuit, it looked different. But that was something they would have known if they'd done qualitative due diligence, not just quantitative. So make sure you're doing both.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, look, mic drop on it. I agree, absolutely. And I think that that's where having a diverse team comes into play, because there are going to be people, especially if they are, actually from those communities, and they're invested in what happens there, and they're invested in like the harm repair of those communities that have been disparately impacted, then they're going to make sure that they're not forgotten, right? And so it's not just about the facility, it's not just about those who are who you're employing in your facility, but it's the surrounding community, because those are your consumers, right? Like those are the people who should be able to walk to your facility. Those are the people you want to make sure are supporting you. And so they have to be a part of the decision-making process from the beginning. How are you showing up? How are you bringing the community in? How are you assessing what the needs are and not just assuming, right? But making sure that they feel like they have a voice and that this is their space as well, right? When people feel vested and they feel like they're a part of something, then they take care of it differently.
Absolutely.
And I think because of the political uncertainty that we're in, especially at the federal level, that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take, because someone had this yesterday, did a presentation on it. No one is going to fucking save us.
Meg
Meg, yes. Yeah, Meg said it. I think she said it best. It's like, we have to support ourselves.
Yes.
And women, we do that, right? Like we're well versed in how we show up for each other, and how we get others to be a part of that. But that's what it's going to take in order for us to make it through this. The days of the green rush, like the days of coming in and quickly making a buck and getting out of here, like they are gone. Right? And so even with this administration, we're not sure. We know that there's a stall on rescheduling. And so, it's fair to say that where things are where things are. Federally, we'll probably deal with the Farm Bill. But other than that, it's probably safe to say that where things are where they are. And so any decisions that we're making have to be with that in mind, not with our hopes, but with our reality. And so we have to make sure that we are preparing ourselves to weather these storms.
I couldn't agree more.
So let's talk about selling your business. So there's a couple different ways you could sell your business. There's different circumstances, when things go right and when things are not going right. You kind of have to get out quick. So let's talk about opportunities potentially when you actually you have a distressed business and you need to sell that business. That's what I see a lot of right now. If you could speak to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you want to do specifically distressed.
Yeah.
So we are seeing a lot of distressed businesses in the industry. Bo Whitney's here. I don't know if you guys know him, but his economic data for the industry is incredible. And Bo did a report, was it last year, Bo, where it was 67% of the industry, businesses in this industry are not profitable. The other challenge in terms of the lack of profitability is the fact that we are not a federally legal industry, so we have no access to bankruptcy. So if you're a distressed business, your path out is receivership. If you live in a state that has receivership access, or to find someone who will acquire that license in an attempt to turn it over, to make it more operationally efficient. Now, there's a couple of ways to do it. Sometimes your creditors are going to force you into it, whether it's through a receivership process or not. There could be a negotiated process where with your creditors, you hire a partner who's going to, like a management services firm that's going to come in and try to get your business to be operationally efficient and to be, I don't even want to say profitable because it's so difficult, but, keep in existence until such time as we get some relief or markets pick up. Or it could be there is someone who's very interested in just acquiring a license and acquiring an operating facility. There's people in this room I know that are looking to do that. And you need to understand for yourself, what does that exit look like? Are you looking to dump and run? Or are you looking to partner with someone where you help that business grow and understand the underlying history? But you have to really figure out what your motivation is. I think that's my first.
I would say, first of all, we love Bo. MCBA, the Minority Cannabis Business Association, has had several opportunities to work with Bo. I think the economic report that you're talking about, we actually partnered on that one. Yeah. So we actually partnered on economic report that Bo went out. So we love working with Bo on this data, because data needs to drive. I'm going to say something that is probably going to be a little surprising, a little shocking, and especially because, the work that we do with MCBA and also the Cannabis Impact Fund centers around equity, right? But I think we're in the space where we have to reclaim and reframe some language. And so I am not in support of equity programs. And I will say the reason why I'm not in support of equity programs is because every program that I have studied is infantilizing. You have said this a number of times, and that is the case. Anyone who gets into the cannabis business, any business, they are looking at two things. They're looking at either how to scale or to sell, right? That's the only thing. Like, that's how you're going to, come out with your payday, if you will, all right? Or having your end in mind. How am I going to scale my business so that I'm buying 50,000 instead of 5,000 of something, because that's where I start to save money. That's where I see the cost savings. Or how am I positioning myself so that I can sell the business? And most equity programs limit either one or both of those things, right? So there is going to be a time limit on when you can sell your license. Maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 5 years, but there's going to be some kind of parameter in regards to how you can monetize the license in and of itself, which for some people, that may be the only payday that they want or the only opportunity that they have for it. And then in terms of scaling, more often than not, you are, as an equity license holder, you are locked into certain parameters. And when you try to go beyond those parameters, your waivers are removed, your fee reductions are removed. And so because we're still dealing in this federally illegal space and don't have access to traditional banking, and we're still dealing with 280E, it's like, where is the money for this coming from? Because to be honest, VC capital is dried up, right? I mean, even before it was dry, minority entrepreneurs only received about 2%. That's overall, not just with the cannabis industry. If you trickle down into cannabis in and of itself, it's even less. And when you're talking about startups, they're not giving you money to start up. They want proof of concept, right? So that means that, like, you're going to your network, people are mortgaging their homes, things of that nature. And so MCBA, we're not in support of that. Like, we're not, it's actually additional harm or compounded harm that's being done, right? So what we're saying is that equity needs to mean access. How accessible is the industry? Because if the licensing process is only $2,500, then I can really bootstrap. Like, I can do this on my own, and I don't have to get involved in these predatory deals and things of that nature. I can still control my idea and what I'm bringing to the table. And so we're really preaching that in pushing and developing language around equity has to mean accessibility. Just make it accessible so that I don't need you, right? And then also pushing ancillary opportunities, right? We want to make sure that individuals know that you don't have to start plant touching, right? You should really start in other areas that are an easier lift, so that you are not restricted by 280E and compliance and all those other things, and you can build your brand name that can actually be nationwide as opposed to just stuck in the state. I said a lot, but I just want to say that, though. I just want to say that because this country, we're centered around this bootstrap mentality, right? Like, pick yourself by your bootstraps, you need to do it. And it's like, but I don't even have a shoe. You know what I mean? Like, you're making it, so how am I supposed to do that? And so it's important to reclaim and reframe. And then one more thing, success can't just mean you have your license. Success has to mean you have your license, your doors are open, and you're in the black. Because we know that there are a lot of licenses out there that are not operational, and people who have been given a license open their door, and now they are distressed assets. And now they've done all the hard work of compliance and putting it together, and somebody else is going to swoop in, right? And that person that's going to swoop in probably does not look like them, right? Because these are equity operators, small business owners who are going through this. A man is going to swoop in, a white man is going to swoop in, and is going to collect that distressed asset. And you've done all the work, and you are left, holding the empty bag. So we just have to have, like, these real conversations based on where we are, based on our reality of how we're encouraging people to engage in this industry.
Absolutely. And, it's not just going to be you that's holding that empty bag. It's going to be your shareholders, because it's highly likely on an acquisition for a distressed asset, the entire cap table is going to get wiped out. We just saw it with Ease, right? So you as a business owner that's taking money from your family, your friends, know that when you get to that distressed area and you're trying to just alleviate yourself from this burden of this asset, you may be wiping out whatever your friends and family gave you, whatever other investors gave you, and unfortunately that's the reality for distressed.
Yeah, and a lot of times equity folks can't afford legal counsel or financial counsel. That's what I've seen. They need help, and they come to me, or they come to friends of ours, and they just can't afford it. So you want to help them out of it. And on the other side of it, they have, like you said, these VC sophisticated folks, and how you defend yourself in that kind of situation, right? So it ends up becoming very predatory.
Absolutely.
Very, very predatory. And I love what you're doing. Thank you so much. So let's talk about kind of a more successful situation. You built your business up, and actually there are cases like this.
There are.
You know, there are a lot of cases like this where you've done what you're supposed to do. Founders have done what they were supposed to do. Teams have, and they have a successful exit plan or a sale. So let's talk about something more positive.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think one of the areas, a good example of this right now is the roll up that just happened with Vireo Growth. So Vireo Growth rolled up the Flowery in Florida. They rolled out Deep Roots, Deep Roots in Nevada. Proper, I think, out in Utah, whatever the Utah one was. And then they had their own assets as well. But the way that they targeted those assets were these assets were operating with limited debt. They were cash flow positive. They were performing companies. They were companies that figured out how to survive within the markets that they existed in. And that's why these companies were attractive to Vireo to be rolled up into this very large new multi-state operator. And we'll see what happens as these deals close. But that Vireo roll-up gave me hope that there are assets out there that are still capable of being rolled up. Let's hope.
Yeah. And those groups have different leverage.
Yeah.
You know, like when you are operating, you know, with a very tight budget, and so you're cash flow positive, as you were saying. When you're looking at these acquisitions, or you're looking at these opportunities where you come to the table with a different position, you come to the table with one of power, right? So there's actually, all negotiations are about power, right? Like it's this compromise of making sure that no one feels like they've got the short end of the stick, but sometimes you just don't have any power when you're going to the table. Like you said, when you're like distressed, it's like, you know, just, hey, whatever you got, you know what I mean? Like, help me out here. But when you come from that position, then you can have some terms as well, you know? And maybe you also still want to be a part of the bigger picture, but just know, like, for the scaling, there's more capital that's needed to take you to the next level.
And there are some really good operators out there in these markets. They might not be splashed all over the press. They might not be at conferences. They might not be on LinkedIn. But there are operators that are doing very well. I can think of some dispensaries here in Maryland that are doing $25 million a year, $35 million a year. One dispensary. I mean, there are businesses that have figured it out and how to operate within the confines of this industry. We just don't hear as much about it.
For sure. And I'd say there's also a lot of partnerships that can be formed too. I'm encouraging a lot of the clients that I work with in a geographic region. You can either partner vertically or, you know, just there's power in numbers.
Yes.
And so you can kind of align and do it, you know? So let's see. Let's talk about, we've kind of only got a few more minutes left. I think I'm just going to leave it up for kind of wrapping up comments and how do people find you or otherwise. Oh, yes.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
I just want to say thank you for the time. As a cultivator trying to come on board, I'm looking to partner up with dispensaries and processors. Can you share your experience what a worst deal, best deal, kind of perfect deal would look like in that aspect?
Sure.
Trying to figure out what a good deal, bad deal, perfect deal looks like as a cultivator or anybody teaming up with another licensee.
Sure, I like the way that you're thinking too. I think it's important to create these relationships to create a vertical. I think, you know, one, it depends on what market you're in. Two, it depends on what your license type is. What's your cultivation size? What are you looking to accomplish in terms of creating this mini vertical through management agreements or whatever? So it's a very deep question that you're asking that I would need to see a lot of paperwork on to figure out how to advise you the best. Deals can look different all over the place. I mean, you can, if you're a brand, you can do a licensing deal You can do co-packing agreements. I have some companies that are cultivators, but they haven't gotten to market yet. So then they partner with a processor to to create a product for their retail stores because they might have a retail store. I'm happy to have a conversation with you about that.
What do you think is the best source for checking the most recent EBITDA and revenue multiples so we know like what the tops are, like Veridian or any other?
I like Viridian. I mean, Viridian is very good. Yeah,
I would say, yeah. I would say
Viridian.
Viridian. Yeah.
Scott Frankfurt does a great job.
Hi, I'm a license holder in Washington, D.C., so our market is very interesting. I guess my question is, I'm a new licensee, so how do you determine the value of a license in a market where a license has never been sold? So you mentioned team and facility and things like that, but if you could just go down like a list of what would go into determining the valuation of a license in a market like that has never seen it.
So what type of license do you have?
I have a dispensary license.
So you could look for comparable markets.
But what if there are no
To yours? I know DC is a little bit different. And Bo could probably answer this really well. But go to maybe Delaware.
And I would say forecasting.
Size.
I would say forecasting. So
Forecasting.
yeah, you're looking at like population size, you're looking at tourists, like so what those possibilities are, what foot traffic could be. I know you don't have a location yet, right? So you do. So I mean, yeah, you want to factor that in, location, right? So like what would your foot traffic be? What is your potential for expansion? Those would be things that I would factor in. Right? Right, Bo? Okay. Hey, Carlo.
I guess you got us all around that. My question wasn't asking. So, with multiples on it, are there any markets you see similar to Maryland, and what are the multiples that you see currently? And do you have any wild predictions what Maryland multiples could be in 5 to 7 years? Granted that we keep up with licensing that's on the bill.
Oh, okay. So our time is up.
We should just
So immediately following this
Yeah.
presentation, I'm going over to the other side into the Magnolia room where we're having a workshop on people who want to sell or acquire licenses. So we could probably address some of these comments there if that's helpful.
Okay, so- Well, thank you so much, ladies. And where do we find you online or otherwise?
You can find me on LinkedIn at Leah.Heise. And I'm also at www.wolfmeyer.com. And reach out. Happy to talk to anyone.
Likewise on LinkedIn, just first name, last name as well.
Ditto on LinkedIn. Also, if you're not a member of MCBA, please consider joining us and please consider donating to the Cannabis Impact Fund. We have to support each other in moving this agenda forward, this movement forward, and making sure that we're still here, that women are still here, that minorities are still here, that we're making sure that we have an equitable space. So join us. You can start the allies here. It's only $100 a year, but really we have to build a movement. We have to build our army, and that's how we're going to move this forward.
Thank you, ladies.